In this tutorial, I will walk you through creating a stylized road path through a landscape, and we will add textures and trees. All done in Blender. Let's go! Let me show you how to make a landscape in Blender 4.5 with just using a few easy to do techniques. I began using a simple plane, which I subdivided a few times. With this plane selected, I added a displace modifier to it. In this case, I used the height map for the displacement modifier. To prevent weird edges, set the mapping to extend. To give the landscape way more detail, I added a subsurf modifier and placed it above the displace one. This looks really nice. A great base terrain to build on. In this project we need to apply both modifiers so we can create a path through this terrain. I created a new material called Color Height. In the World tab, I added an Environment HDRI texture. This gives us realistic light. Let us get the Color Height shader ready in the shader workspace. I am making a shader that colors the terrain by height, so when I add a road or path, I can easily see where it fits best. Using a color ramp, map range, and separate XYZ node, we add height-based color to the terrain. As you can see, this works like a charm. Let us add some colors to make it stand out even more. To make a path through this landscape, I will use mesh vertices. In this case a plane, but you can also use a curve. I'm creating a line of vertices for the road, trying to stay within the blue areas to make the path feel more natural and not become too bumpy. This looks fine enough. To create a path through this landscape, I developed an add-on that combines a few modifiers. This to realize a quad-based road that is carved out of the landscape. The add-on takes care of all the necessary selections, while we stay in control of the width smoothing, vertex count, and road height. The add-on is done, but I have not released it yet. I just need to tidy up the code and get rid of a few functions. So basically, the add-on sets up the material, bevels the mesh line, adds subdivisions how you like, and evens out the vertices. Here I try to match the vertex distance with the chords of the landscape. Too many vertices can get messy, so I keep it on the low side for better control. Here I set the road width, apply some vertical smoothing, and then use a knife projection to cut a path into the terrain. All automatically handled by the add-on. The hop select tool lets you adjust how gently the road merges into the terrain. More hops means a softer blend. And finally, we merge the path into the landscape. The result looks great. The road is still made entirely of quads with no duplicate vertices. I gave the landscape a PBR material, and unwrapped it from the top so the path matches the landscape UVs. To keep things clear, make a frame around every material setup. Then I duplicate the material for the snow layer. That is easier than starting from scratch. Just swap out the images, set the grayscale maps to non-color, and you're good. Here I show how the snow is distributed across the terrain, using a height map I made in Gaia 2, using an erosion node. With this setup, using a mix shader, we can blend the snow layer onto the terrain in a way that feels natural and follows the height details. Tweaking the color ramp a bit really sells the effect, right? I think this looks very nice. Now it is time to create the path material. I duplicated an existing texture setup and added a few extra nodes in between to tweak the look. The most important node is the attribute node. This node tells Blender which areas get this material. I combine this with a color ramp node to control the blending, then connect it to a new mix shader and plug it into the factor input. This lets Blender know exactly how to mix the materials based on the attribute. To make the path look less perfect, I set up a noise texture node to add some random dirt colors. This gives the path a more natural appearance. Make sure to name the attribute node, as it will be needed later to reference it in the geometry nodes. To assign a material to a specific vertex, add a store named attribute node in the geometry nodes window. Then add a named attribute node and connect them as shown. Make sure to name the nodes exactly as demonstrated. The store named attribute node must be named tracks, to link back to the path material attribute we created. Give the named attribute node the same name you use for your vertex group. Remember to replace the placeholder images with the correct ones. I used the add-on to add cubs to the path and insert additional edge loops along it. These edge loops define the dirt path. Well, we will use two of them. Select two edge loops and add the selection to the vertex group, path tracks. Pay attention to capital letters. With this color ramp, I first choose some distinct colors to see the effect. To indent the road a bit, we select the edge loops and use proportional editing set to random. Use the mouse wheel to control the amount. After setting the mesh to shade smooth, things are already looking much nicer. Now, to make the path look a bit more natural, select the edge loops. And then use Select Random to deselect some of those edges. Adjust the settings until you achieve a result like this. With this selection, adjusting which vertices are included or excluded from the vertex group will allow you to control whether the surface ends up covered in dirt or snow. Now I am adding some trees to the scene. For this project, I created a set of simple billboard style trees to keep things efficient and visually consistent. First, I will clean up the geometry node setup and add labels to make everything clearer and easier to follow. In geometry nodes, I set up the trees individually and connect them so that their placement can be controlled using vertex groups. This way, I can pin exactly where I want the trees to appear on the terrain, giving full control over distribution and density. The named attribute node links to a vertex group, so make sure to give it a name. The store named attribute node is used to add random color variation to the billboard trees. This step is not strictly necessary, since size can be controlled in geometry nodes, but I scale the tree objects down anyway. Make sure the pivot point is at the base of the trunk. In the 3D viewport, I start painting a selection and add it to a vertex group. Make sure to name the vertex group the same as the named attribute node for that tree. Make sure that the value node that we connected to the named attribute node is greater than 0. The trees are still too large, so I applied the scale to fix this. Now we can easily adjust the size in geometry nodes to get the desired look. I repeated the same process for the other trees by copying the node setup, updating the labels, and renaming the attribute nodes to match each tree. It is important to connect the group input to the distribute on point node for each tree, and also connect the instance on points to the join geometry for each tree. I created 2 more vertex groups for the remaining trees and painted a random selection across the terrain. You do not see that many trees yet, since the value in the geometry nodes is very low. Let us increase it. When rendering with cycles, don't forget to increase the max transparency bounces in the light path settings. This helps eliminate transparency artifacts caused by overlapping billboard trees. In the outliner, select one of the tree objects and edit as material. Add an attribute node in between the image, and add a mix color node after that. Name the attribute node exactly how we called it in the geo nodes. Make sure to set the attribute node's type to instancer, otherwise the color variation from geometry nodes will not be applied correctly. Back in geometry node, fine-tune the random value node that controls the color variation. To create a mist effect in your scene, place a cube around the environment and assign it a material. In the shader editor, add the volume scatter node and connect it to the material output. Adjust the settings until you achieve the desired misty atmosphere. For the final touch, I added a camera and placed an empty object at the point I want the camera to focus on. In the camera settings under depth of field, select the empty as the target and adjust the f-stop to achieve the desired focus. Now, let us check out the final result. I did some finishing touches in Photoshop, but this gives you the idea. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial.